Chinese marketers learn to play ball with consumers. Now this is thoughtful. Hello, I'm Trevor Lai in Shanghai. China is one of the world's biggest markets for sportswear and sports. 100 years ago, Christian missionaries came here with a Bible in one hand and a basketball in the other. But Chinese are more likely to watch sports than to play them, leaving the field wide open for brands to cultivate audiences for new sports. Our panel will tell you what to expect next. And PT Black will have a thought or two on how to play the game. But first, Harvey Davis, ESPN's VP of Event Management in Asia, is here with us to talk about the Kia X Games Asia, which were just held in Shanghai for the 5th time. Harvey, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure. Nice to be here.
Harvey, the X Games are a regional event, and ESPN's Asian office is headquartered in Singapore. Why are these games held in Shanghai? Are extreme games a growing sport in China?
Great question. This is our 5th year here in Shanghai, in China, and we're excited to be back. Every year we've seen the event grow and develop from a spectator standpoint, from an athlete standpoint. Shanghai is an important market and a growth market for ESPN, as well as for our title sponsor Kia. And so for the next year and the next 2 years, we'll be back here in Shanghai and looking to build on last year's great event and make it even bigger and better.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the market from the time that you first were here for the first X Games to the ones this year?
The biggest thing I think we've seen is that these sports are now recognized in China as real sports, with real committees, real organizations reporting up to the top government organizations in Beijing. So that's one of the biggest things we've seen, the growth of the sport here in China, the recognition from governments, from authorities in China and also in Asia for action sports. I think the second biggest thing is with that comes the youth and the push from the youth market to take part in these sports. And if you can't take part in it, just be a part of it, whether it's through the fashion, the music, the lifestyle. X Games and action sports is not just about the sport, it's about the culture and the lifestyle.
This is the biggest action sports competition in Asia. Let's take a look at this year's games. That looks dangerous. Many Chinese families have only one child. Are you finding any challenges or resistance to the types of action sports that you guys feature for the Kia X Games here in Asia and especially in China?
It looks dangerous, but realistically speaking, the number of injuries and serious accidents that we have at our X Games events globally, worldwide, is minimal and just on a par with other normal sports as well.
But what's the dynamic between the parents and the athletes, or the parents and kids or rebellious teens who are interested in this sport? What's the dynamic between the parents?
I mean, interesting one, because at the end of the day, action sports, X Games, it's a lifestyle, it's a culture, as I mentioned. It's the music you listen to, the clothes you wear. It could be the same clothes and music you listen to and wear in Japan as you do in the US or Shanghai or Beijing. So the parents, rather than, I think, resisting the children's growth and movement in this direction, because these sports have become more mainstream now, more acceptable with governments, with associations, federations supporting them, I think the parents are more agreeable, more willing to see their children move into action sports. Whereas 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, they wouldn't let their child or want their child to be associated with skateboarding, BMX, or inline, or mini mega ramps, things like that.
Harvey, thanks a lot for joining us today on Thoughtful China. And now it's time for a thought or two from PT Club.
China isn't known for its sports. Dumplings, yes, but spandex? Not so much. Let me be clear, Chinese people do watch sports. They watch NBA, Manchester United, Formula One, but there isn't a lot of sports participation. Now, part of this comes from a legacy of centralized sports planning, which takes all the kids who are good at sports out of the mainstream school system, therefore depriving their classmates of the chance to actually play with the good kids. Another reason is parents. They're the biggest obstacle. When the exam system is so important, parents look at any moment dedicated to sports as a moment that should have been spent studying. The result is that sports brands in China don't actually sell much sporting gear. Nike is more like a lifestyle company. Adidas is a fashion company. Both of them think about what looks good, but performance gear, not so much. But as living standards rise, leisure is rising as well. Parents are encouraging their kids to get physical. Schools see the looming obesity epidemic on the horizon and are pushing kids out of doors to get active. Even working adults, faced with stressful days, are appreciating the benefits of a little bit of physical activity. So Chinese people are getting in the game, and smart brands are there to meet them. Basketball is a clear winner here. Courts around the country are packed, rain or shine. In fact, on campuses, the coolest boys have a basketball in their bag. But the bag itself may be made by Nike, but it could also be made by Anta or Peak, two local competitors who have invested a lot in building their basketball credentials. Badminton is the other mainstream choice. Badminton is huge and is accelerating as Li Ning, the nation's largest sports maker, is giving it the celebrity treatment with sexy events, activities, and beautiful advertising. The lesson for brands is clear. You can't just leverage existing sports love. In China, you have to invest in the fans and build the love. It's a lot of work, but the potential is tremendous. Look at skateboarding. For years, Nike and Vans and a couple of other brands have invested in the X Games and other skateboard activities, showing how fun it can be with very little participation. Now, in the past couple of years, skateboarding has become very popular. In fact, it's even being taught on elementary schools at recess. That's right, the schools are teaching kids how to skateboard, different from when I grew up. So what's the secret? One word: sexy. No matter what it's sport, make it look good. Make the activities look good, the people look good, the outfits you're selling look good. If you accessorize it, they will come. And maybe, if you're lucky, they'll even sweat.
Thanks, PT. With me now is Qin Huang, ECD at TBWA China, and Eric Lai, skate manager at Converse China. Thanks for joining us today on Thoughtful China.
Thank you for having us.
Qin, we just saw that clip from the Kia X Games Asia. And we also know that here in China, mixed martial arts and the Ultimate Fighting Championship all have big audiences. Would a brand like Adidas be interested in participating in these types of extreme sports?
I think the answer is sure, of course. I think, as a sports brand, you want to be anywhere where the spirit and is there. I think we're already doing it. For example, with martial arts, we've started with a partnership with Jet Li. We've got a training program called Wuji. We've got sort of martial arts inspired workout gear. That's more in training. I'm not sure about getting into the extreme fighting angle of it. But regarding, for example, X Games type, we're already doing gear and clothing for parkour, for city cycling, fixed gear. So I would imagine that's sort of the future. As sort of sports expands. I'm sure we'll want to be there.
Right, and Eric, what type of marketing opportunities do you see for an action sport like skateboarding?
I think looking at the population of China, there's like hundreds of millions of young teenagers out there. They want to be like something, they want to do something different, They want to do like independent sport and they want to go outdoor. I think that's like a huge opportunity for every brand out here.
And for Converse, how long ago did you guys start to see and target this segment specifically?
Since we have like a full-on like skate product line, and then we start doing that since last summer.
And for Adidas, your attention on action sports and some of the segments that you just mentioned, is that something recent and growing, or is that something that's still a very niche market?
I think it's growing. I think, from the brand point of view, of course, you want to be authentic, so you want to be there in the beginning. And to be honest, you want to foster the growth. You want to be there with them. You don't necessarily want to jump in when it's there. Because for brands, it's not necessarily just selling stuff, but you want to be part of that sport. And for a lot of these new urban sports, as they're starting out, we try to do what we can to get gear for them, to get them started, and then to help them get better. That's really what we want to do.
So live events, broadcasts, or online, what's the best way to reach sports fans in China?
I think all of it, right? I think it's standard answer is media mix, but I think online's a huge opportunity. And I think online is still evolving. We were talking about earlier, it's not just watching stuff on your website or phone anymore. You got Weibo's and that kind of thing where things are being transmitted. And I think we haven't even seen the full potential of the new media yet. But obviously, nothing's gonna ever replace being there and doing it for real. But I think with all this added media, it's just gonna get easier and more fruitful.
And so is your focus really then still on pushing the first tier cities and eventually waiting for the second and third tier to catch up, or are you behind the surge and trying to push that trend forward?
Well, for us, I think our biggest competition is coming from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, because I think a lot of local brands really focus, you've got the Antas, the 361s and whatnot, so they're really focusing on tier 2, tier 3 cities. So obviously for us, we're stupid not to consider that as a threat. Then you've got brands like Li Ning who are big everywhere, so they've even got their own way of going around us. But I think that our strategies obviously have to be a little bit different. We just have to be more nimble and really understand what's going on in tier 2 and tier 3. I think China, as big as it is, I think that the thought of doing it in tier 1 and everyone will follow is probably not going to work.
Soccer is obviously the biggest sport globally, and for your brand also very important. But why do you think a sport like soccer is not as popular in China compared to basketball?
Soccer is actually quite popular. They follow the Premiership in the UK. In England, I should say, in European. Messi and Rooney. Those names are huge here. But it's just until China gets a decent team and actually starts winning, and we can be on par with the other Asian teams. I mean, forget like competing with the big wigs, but if we can even get close to like the way Korea and Japan is, I think you'll still get more following. I think right now, frankly, soccer in China is quite an embarrassment. A lot of people are kind of like, we should be better, but we're not. So I think it might be as simple as soon as China starts winning, I think people start following.
Yep.
So in terms of coaching and training and actually educating the market, how do you do that as a brand for skateboarding?
I mean, for skateboarding, it's a little bit different, like kids out there, they're on the street, they're skating, skateboarding definitely not working in that way. So I guess kids just like doing their own thing, being independent. So which is like really like connecting to our brand culture, like be independent, do your own thing. So.
But do you find resistance from Chinese parents and the culture sort of skateboarding? Is that something that the parents in China are supporting, or they're trying to discourage their kids from doing?
Well, this is for older generation, they're definitely not supporting the kids to go skateboarding because in terms of their one-child policy, like they definitely don't want the kid to get hurt. But when the younger generation they get married, when they have kids, the whole thing gonna change. They want the kid to do something like cool, fun. They're definitely not. They're like conservative. So, and then they let kids do their own thing. So, I guess the next 5 years gonna be the big change, for action sports.
Well, Chin, Eric, thanks for joining us on Thoughtful China. That wraps it up for this week. Be sure to subscribe to us on Tudo and YouTube, and you can also follow us on Weibo and Twitter. See you next time.